I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. This Independence Day, three stories about a rueful act of freedom. Following federal layoffs, the Doge cuts as they are known, three federal contractors try out a new life. Kevin Gash of Rockville went from a 14-year career as a USAID contractor working on democracy strengthening projects in Africa, Central Asia, and other parts of the world to starting a food truck called Plan B Sausages that is beginning to thrive even in its first few months. Liza Achilles, also of Rockville, used to be a technical writing contractor for the United States Department of Agriculture, working on internal IT communications. And she is looking to jumpstart a new career in creative writing. Both Achilles and Gash, it turns out, are pursuing long dreamed life projects. And Robin Lewis, a state delegate from Baltimore, who, for most of her professional life, has worked on USAID global health contracts through a Johns Hopkins University development agency affiliate. She has struggled, like thousands of others in the Washington metropolitan area, to find the next step to take, but there is hope. A pivot is not a positive thing when you have already found your life's work. And when the decision to have to make a pivot has been made for you, the result can be resentment, shock, disorientation, and even an inability to reimagine the life we already imagined before. It is not unusual to want to hide, even from our own selves. But with kids in school, mortgages to be paid, parents to be taken care of, there is pressure to figure out the direction of a new life. Stay with us for stories of introspection, learning, change, and hope.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by UMBC's Political Science Program, where you'll learn to shape public policy, impact communities, and function at the center of modern society. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
I got all the rest of my life to figure out what I didn't get right. I got all the rest of my days to figure out how I let you slip away. Take me back to the nights
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning, precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. We celebrate new music for the summer, and this is Silver Spring's own power pop band, the Airport 77s. Andy Sullivan on guitar, John Kelly on drums, and Cal Everett, famously of the band 4 out of 5 Doctors, on the bass. The songs we play come from their brand new album, Don't Let Go. You can find the Airport 77s at airport77s.com and at live concerts all over the DC region.
with the pop pop radio. Baby, one more time. Take me back before it all fell apart. Before you broke my heart. Take me back to 1999. We thought it would last forever. The 31st of December. Singing along with the pop pop pop. Party's over, whoops, out of time. Take me back.
Kevin Gash, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Hi.
You worked for USAID for several years and you were let go as part of the Trump cuts in March this year. And you pivoted to a sausage food truck called Plan B sausages. It seems like you were able to make a very, very quick pivot. How long have you been thinking about Plan B sausages?
Everybody that works in international development always has a plan B. It's a very frustrating line of work, whether it's public health, education, good governance, what I did. And there's just some days you're like, I really need something else to do. And so I think we all have kind of a plan B, but they're a little bit of an odd dream, open up a yoga studio, rent mopeds on a beach. I had always enjoyed making sausage. And I think part of it is that living overseas, I love to go into like local bazaars, and I don't care how unsanitary or how wild they are. They're just a fascinating thing that you do when you're overseas. And sometimes it's live animals, a lot of it's vegetables. We just buy massive chunks of meat, take them home, cut them up into cuts that we recognize and freeze them and use them. Eventually it evolved into a hobby of sausage making and trying some of the different flavors that I remembered as a kid growing up in Germany. I never really had it in the back of my head that I would be, in now 2025 peddling sausages here in Montgomery County, but that's what it's turned into.
Well, first of all, sausages taste great. As a real plan, though, how long have you been thinking about this?
After the election, start to realize that maybe you really need to have a plan B. We had survived the first Trump administration. In fact, some of our work was quite well funded. And I thought in some ways it would be similar, just a little bit of a rebranding, and there would be a shakeup of some things, but life would go on. But then the move to pardon the January 6ers and, what was going to be a administration of retribution. Do I want to be affiliated with this administration? And so, you needed an exit plan. The best thing I had going for me was to do sausages. I really wanted to do a butcher shop, but that takes a while to actually get up and running, and I need to pay my mortgage. And so start with the food truck and see where it goes. And it's starting to work out a bit.
What was the most difficult part of making the switch?
Many years ago, I owned a farm in Hawaii. I trained as a distiller. That was my plan B for about 10 years of my life, but I could never pull the trigger. In this case, the trigger was pulled for me. That conversation with my wife and I, where it's like, this is the best thing that I have going for me. I didn't just lose my job. We lost an industry. It's as if I had poured my entire career into helium balloons, and there's no more helium balloons.
What was the most challenging task after that decision? Was it making a business plan? Was it the financing? Was it figuring out how many months of a ramp you have?
Some of the business paperwork and registration was a little bit frustrating. We had spent at USAID so much time overseas working with countries to really streamline like business registration and business licensing.
How very ironic.
We were so far ahead in countries like Georgia, where we had put a lot of effort into this, to find out that here in Montgomery County and in Maryland, we're not as modern and efficient as I would have hoped. I found the registration of a business to be a little bit slow with the LLC. It took 10 weeks. I sent multiple emails and essentially was told, well, you didn't pay the expediting fee, so you got to wait 10 weeks. The other one that I found is the type of vendor's license I had to get from the county, in addition to like the health certificate and everything else, was $300 and some, and it doesn't actually relate to my business. My food truck doesn't sit in a right of way. My food truck isn't like an ice cream truck that goes from one neighborhood to another. I go to schools, I go to pools, I go to festivals, but yet I had to buy this specific vendor's license.
Is the health department certificate expensive?
Mine was about $500 and some, a little bit high, and I'll have to pay it every year, but I accepted it because there is quite a bit of interaction with the Department of Health, and I found the inspectors actually be quite helpful and proactive.
Do they come to visit your food truck?
They do at the very end. So there's actually a pre-application. You submit what your food truck looks like, what is your menu items, what is called a hazardous analysis and critical control point plan. How you cook your food and what temperatures it reaches, how long it waits, which I think are probably very much needed.
Do you have to demonstrate that by doing it for the inspector? No, I'm just curious.
No, that's a great question, because I've seen that in online threads, and it's like, do I go to their office and cook for them while they come in? And no, not at all. It's a walkthrough to make sure that your fridges are at temperature, to make sure that your water can come up to temperature, that you have equipment that is only approved for commercial use and is fully sanitary.
How did you go about finding a food?
I actually have a food trailer, so I needed a bigger truck than I already owned. So I had to get that first and then buy the trailer itself. Turns out almost all these trailers are in Georgia or Indiana for some reason. There's a big business of modifying regular enclosed trailers into food trailers. And so I spent a lot longer of a time actually trying to buy a truck. Whereas with the trailer, I just sort of settled on the first one that met my specs and seemed to be, the person that if I'd made a down payment and showed up a week later, it would be ready and I could take it back home.
What's the price range for trailers?
Anywhere from 20,000 new up to like 80,000 where they've got everything in them, including fryers and ventilation. And, they really are a fully self-contained kitchen.
If you were to go the truck route, what's the price range?
Comparable. Most food trucks are like retrofitted former delivery trucks, like old UPS van or something like that. The downside is that they break down a lot because you're buying a vehicle with 200,000 miles. It's 20 years old that's been retrofitted.
How did you decide on what you wanted to sell, what you wanted to make, where the recipes come from?
So I've been, I've had some really good sausage recipes. I'm most proud of my bratwurst. I am half German. And there's all kinds of variations on a bratwurst. The mix of marjoram spice and a dash of nutmeg really makes it a fully authentic brat. Half smoke is fun. Most people don't know what a half smoke is. They hear that and they think, oh, a half smoke is a lightly smoked sausage. Actually, it's half pork, half beef. Unlike the U Street one, I don't add a lot of hot pepper into mine, and I wanted to do a chicken sausage. So I came up with a really nice Thai curry, extremely mild. It's heavy on the lemongrass and a lot of the Thai basil. My own Italian sausage, I call a Maryland fennel. I rent space in a commercial kitchen and share it with a fabulous young Italian chef, Luca. We sometimes trade recipes, share food.
What does it cost, may I ask?
Well, I think I got a pretty good deal. Shared kitchen space can be as low as $1,000 to $2,000 or $3,000 a month.
Do you schedule space?
Some kitchens do. The one that I ended up in is very flexible. The good thing about almost all of these is they're 24-hour operations.
How do you buy meat?
There are restaurant supply stores and there are distributors. Right now, I'm using a restaurant supply store. They have everything you need in quantities much larger than Costco at a very reasonable price. I get 60-pound boxes of pork butt, for example. It's less than $2 a pound.
I have always wondered about sausage skin. Tell me where it comes from, how you buy it.
Most of your sausage skins are from the intestines of a hog, and they're quite long. I mean, one strand can be 50 feet long. They're already cleaned. I will say that when they come in a pouch, the casings, it's a horrible smell, but it works beautifully.
We talked about production. We talked about getting into it. Talk to me about marketing.
I haven't been so great about marketing. Spread word of mouth. Outside of my professional career, I'm quite involved in our local community pool, and 2 of my 3 kids swim year-round in the Rockville Montgomery Swim Club. It's kind of odd at this stage in life. I've had to pivot to that community to make ends meet. And in this case, I've started reaching out to local pools because we all know pools have food trucks quite commonly. And I said, hey, swim dad here, recently unemployed by the cuts. I've made this pivot. It's Plan B sausages because Plan A didn't work out. Would love to come to your pool. This is my offering.
How hard do you have to work on your Plan B as opposed to what you were doing when you were a USAID?
Yeah. So when I was with USAID, I don't think I ever really worked a 40-hour week. I think we worked a lot more than that, but it was a different type of work. It was, sort of that creative thinking, report writing. This is, I'm on my feet every day. I'm not eating great, to be honest. I'm eating more junk food than I should. I'm sadly skipping meals or just engorging myself. I do eat a lot of sausage. I have yet to get tired of it, but I'm losing weight.
If you were to give some advice to other federal workers on pivoting, what would you say to them?
It's a risk and it really takes you out of your comfort zone. I don't know if I would have done this if I didn't really have somebody to pull that trigger for me. Or in my situation, I didn't have a lot of time to ponder what the heck am I doing? I mean, there are times that I'm like, what am I doing? I'm peddling.
But if you pondered, would you have not done this?
Yes. Time was not on my side, and I just had to dive in and do whatever I needed. Another thing at the time all of this was going on, I have a chronically ill child, and he was going through a pretty difficult phase. There were a few nights that I was in the ER overnight, no sleep. My friends and colleagues are losing their minds as we're watching aid dissolve. And all I could think about was my son, and really focused on what was most important in my life. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about that. And so I think that sort of leads me, my best piece of advice is that you do have to think of some of this as white noise, the politics, sadly. It's some things you just can't influence and you're a victim of in this case. Don't let that really bring you down.
Kevin Gash, good luck.
Thank you.
Kevin Gash, formerly of the USAID, and now of Plan B sausages. You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. I'll be back with my next guest, Liza Achilles, formerly of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Liza Achilles, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Sunil.
You were a contract technical writer for USDA in their IT department, and you were laid off in early March of this year as part of the DOGE cuts. What were the circumstances?
I was actually on vacation. I had taken the Friday and the Monday off. On Sunday night, I went to the movies. When I got out of the movie, suddenly there's text, there's emails, and there's phone calls. And I find out from both my boss at the Department of Agriculture and also my boss at the company I was working for that my contract had been terminated. And that day, that vacation day, was my last day of work, and I would not be paid after that day.
You were not expecting that to happen?
Of course, I had heard about all the layoffs, and of course, I knew about DOGE, and I suspected it might be a possibility, but I had no idea. I was sitting in a restaurant with my sister-in-law, and I just kind of didn't feel like eating after that. I just told her, order me a soda, and started crying a little bit, talked to my loved ones. But at the same time, I guess I knew I would be okay. And for many, many months prior to that, I had been thinking about making the leap to being a freelancer.
You knew you would be okay regardless because you had savings?
I did have savings. I also know that technical writers are very much in demand. I also have previous experience as a proposal writer, and proposal writers are even more in demand. I know that if worst comes to worst, I can immediately get a job as either a technical writer or a proposal writer.
But you did not get a job as a technical writer or a proposal writer. You pivoted.
I did. I am an author. I wrote a book of Shakespearean sonnets about my love life. And that book was published last year. I've wanted to be an author forever for my whole adult life, and I finally achieved that goal last year. I'm working on another book, and it's a huge endeavor writing a book, and it's very, very difficult to do that while working full time. And so I kind of had this idea that if I was freelancing, I could control my time a little bit better. Now, whether that's true or not is another question, but that's what I'm doing now. And I'm also doing a really wide diversity of other sort of types of things in the writing, editing, literary world that I really love. And one thing that I love about freelancing is you can do so many different types of things if you want to, that you're never going to get bored.
You're going from having a job to having a freelance gig. You had some savings. Did you change your lifestyle at all?
The biggest change I made was I got some tenants. I am now sharing my home with two people. I'm fortunate in that I have a home with, bedrooms that I wasn't using. So that is helping a lot. I do have that rental income. I actually had one tenant already. I had not been planning on getting a second tenant, but I decided to go ahead and do that after I got laid off. I also said to myself, I'm going to give this freelance thing a year. And I looked at the savings that I have. I looked at the income that was coming in, and I know that I can get through a year totally fine.
With your home, do you pay a mortgage or are you done?
I do have a mortgage.
Do you support a family or are you're by yourself?
Right. That's another factor is it's just me that I'm supporting.
Let's talk about the various areas in which you have been freelancing.
The first one is as an author, but I'll tell you what, publishing a book of poetry is not bringing me in any income. It's actually a loss. But as a writer, I'm continually submitting short stories and things like that, and sometimes you do get paid. I'm an editor, and I'm currently editing a novel. I would like to do some other types of editing work, but I'm being a little bit cautious right now because I know that I could get locked back into the technical editing, and I want to see if I can, do more fun things. The third income stream is being a speaker. I've done some speaking engagements at literary conferences, and some of them are paid, which is very exciting. So I'm talking about how to have a successful book launch. And I am talking at a conference coming up about how to write a memoir because my book of poetry was also a memoir. I'm also looking into getting into more teaching classes, and I'm looking into teaching for lifelong learning for seniors. I would love to do some lecturing on perhaps Shakespeare's sonnet. The fourth thing is I have a blog. I've been writing my blog since 2018, and it's called The Blog for the Discerning Reader. It's about the best modern books. I absolutely love it. It comes out on Mondays. I've been doing it long enough, and I've been using SEO strategies to try to bring traffic to the site. And I have enough traffic to the site that I am able to get some affiliate income, which basically means companies will contact me and ask me to put in a link. I also have a Patreon account where people who like my blog can support me as a creator. Here's number 5. I know how to design websites, and I have a client, which is the F. Scott Fitzgerald Literary Festival. I am redesigning their website.
So, of all these areas, which is the most promising to you at this moment?
I think the web design.
Isn't web design just another form of technical writing?
Well, it is technical, and that's why it's maybe the most promising, right? But I think with the web design, I can incorporate a lot more creativity.
How do you make a cold call?
I don't. No, that's not really true. When I've made cold calls in the past, it's to get somebody's email.
In this process, I'm sure you said about understanding your network. Where is it? Who are part of it? How do you do that mapping, even maybe informally?
I am the host of 2 Silent Book Club chapters. And if you haven't heard of Silent Book Club, it's where people get together and we bring our own books and we talk about reading, and then we read silently all together, like in a restaurant. I also try to attend writers groups. There are a lot of really great opportunities in Washington, D.C. One of them is called Inner Loop, and they get a really huge crowd of people once a month to watch people read their literary work. I try to do a lot of events like that.
Is there a balance in your mind about how much time you're spending networking and how much time you're actually doing the work?
That's a really hard one.
Can you do networking on the cheap, or is it a lot of paid places, you have to go to restaurants or, paid events. And
A lot of it is fairly inexpensive. Sometimes you'll go to an event and they'll charge a very small amount, like $10. And a lot of the times it'll be optional.
how do you use social media for this purpose?
The goal is to keep up with the people I've met in person. There are people who are making an amazing amount of sales and, selling books and getting clients and all of this just based on social media alone. And I know it's possible. I haven't personally cracked the code for that, and I think I'd have to be online a lot more than I am. And I feel like I'm at my limit for what I can for the time that I have to be on social media.
A lot of people have problem asking for help, especially within their friend circle or network. They hesitate. They feel like they can't make the ask. So in fact, people are more able to ask for help outside their network and actually also receive help outside their network than within it.
Yes, I totally understand. It's hard. It's really hard. I think that I have a leg up on that because I did it with my book. So when my book came out last year, what I discovered is if you just put out a mass email about your book and say, hey, I published a book, check it out, here's where you can buy, nobody might buy it. You have to make the personal connection and you have to make the ask. You're right. It's hard. It feels terrible. It feels like, oh my gosh, this person who I love is going to not love me anymore because I just asked them for something.
It also feels kind of grubby. Whenever you leverage a relationship, it kind of seems that you're using it. Help me work this out, because I think for a lot of people who have lost jobs and are trying to make pivots, these are questions that are deep in their hearts, even unexpressed. You've gone through this and you're open about it.
One thing it comes down to is, do I believe that the product I'm selling or the service I'm selling is truly going to benefit the other person? I think a lot of people are like halfway thinking they're the best thing ever and halfway thinking they're the worst thing ever. And you have all these conflicting thoughts in your head. And I think it took me a really long time to sort of come to terms with trying to think about what I have to offer the world in a more rational way and be like, okay.
What is the more rational way?
I think that it's being able to look at yourself and say, okay, I'm not perfect, but I have put in the work and I have these small areas of expertise.
I guess sell yourself to yourself.
There's this huge psychological component that's like the first step. For so many years, I was an extreme introvert. And when I was thinking about, oh, what if I publish my book one day, I'm going to have to stand up in front of people and talk to people. And that terrified me so much. I joined Toastmasters, which is the public speaking organization. I think that there's something about public speaking that's the same thing that what we're talking about, right? The ability to stand up in front of a crowd and be like, hey, everybody, listen to me.
You have to have the pretension that what it is that you're doing and how it is that you're doing it and what you're offering is life-changing in some way.
Yes. Yes. You have to believe that. And you can't just believe it falsely. I'm going to put affirmations on Post-it notes and post them around my house, and then I'll believe it. No, it has to be built on actual reality of like actual skills that you actually have because you actually worked on stuff for years.
When you are trying to make real change, you have to have been thinking about your pivot for a long time. You were a technical writer wanting to be an author. I believe many technical writers want to be authors.
Probably all of them.
That back of the mind scheming that is a continual process in your head. Speak to that.
Gosh, for me, it's been my whole life. I just always knew that I wanted to be a creative person, and I wanted to do it whether it was going to pay me or not, but I also knew that I had to make a living somehow. And so I feel like in my career, I've just been very slowly inching closer and closer to the dream. And maybe I'll never get to the dream being, making a full living as an author. Maybe I'll never get there, but I'm really happy to be in the game.
Liza Achilles, thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Author Liza Achilles, formerly of the United States Department of Agriculture. You're listening to I Hate Politics. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. I'll be back with my next guest, Maryland State Delegate from Baltimore, Robin Lewis, and her story. Robin Lewis, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Thank you, Sunil. Great to be with you.
You are a Maryland delegate from Baltimore, and you also lost your job in January as part of all the changes that are going on. Let's start with what you used to do before.
I was working as a consultant at JPIGO. And JPIGO, it's a non-government research and practice institute in Johns Hopkins University that focuses on international health. So I spent a lot of years working there back in the past, and in recent months, I was really happy and lucky to find a consultancy at JPIGO where my job was as technical writer. I helped to prepare proposals to win funding for international health programs like maternal and child health, vaccine programs, and it was fantastic. My job was flexible. As a consultant, I could accept or reject, invitations to work on proposals. I got to use my foreign language skills. I was specifically hired because of my French language skills. One of the proposals that I worked on that touched my heart was a proposal from the World Health Organization, the WHO, to develop a program to roll out a new measles vaccine. It's a new technology. They've developed some candidate vaccine patches for measles, like an estrogen patch or a nicotine patch. And you can deliver this life-saving vaccine without poking the poor little kid and making them cry. But more importantly, these vaccine candidates actually eliminate the necessity of temperature control. Once it's mixed up, reconstituted, it has to be maintained at a certain freezing temperature. If the vaccine gets too hot, it becomes ineffective. When we heard, I don't know what day it was, the 24th of January, I can't remember, but the word came down, the latest outrage was that foreign aid was canceled. And the very next day, I got a call saying, Robin, your consultancy is over. Thank you so much. The leaders of JPIGO looked into the future and saw this is just the first blow. We need to be ready to respond. So, of course, consultants go first.
Did you have healthcare from them?
No, I have healthcare from the General Assembly.
Ah, okay. What did you do before?
My job was really centered around applied public health research. Hopkins brought me here, and I was offered a position at JPIGO, where I worked for almost 7 years on cervical cancer prevention. I worked in 3 countries, Ghana, Malawi, and Thailand, implementing operations research studies basically to show how cervical cancer could be prevented through a really low technology intervention. This is before the HPV vaccine. I was at Family Health International, where I worked on HIV vaccine and HIV microbicide clinical trials in 4 African countries. Then I got another job back at Hopkins working on phase 1 trials of West Nile virus vaccines and dengue virus we're working on.
So mostly it's been in and around Hopkins.
Yeah, I spent most of my life, for God help me. No, but really lucky, very fortunate, because the work I wanted to do is there.
And Hopkins has obviously been one of the hardest hit federal contractors.
They're being targeted. I've spent my career trying to protect people from infectious disease, the attack of microbes and viruses. How can I use my energy, my life, energy to protect people from the attacks that are about to come? Maybe the way I do that now, it's not by doing applied research around the world, but it's by standing in the breach and as an elected official, passing laws, establishing policies that will make Maryland a safe place for everyone in the face of the coming onslaught.
Once the consulting gig at Hopkins ended late January this year, you were in session at the General Assembly. You were not going to be able to undertake a job search at that time. The session ended in April. What have you been doing since April to pivot from where you were? What kinds of jobs have you been looking for?
Of course, I turned back to Johns Hopkins. I happen to have an affiliate faculty position in the Department of Health Policy and Management in the School of Public Health. It's ceremonial, but it's a great connection, and it opened the door. A few people answered my phone calls when I let them know I'm job hunting. But Hopkins, again, is under attack. And just as Jhpiego, which is an affiliate of Hopkins, an arm of Hopkins, had to scale back and fire a lot of employees and let all the consultants go, the university itself is hunkering down. So the opportunities just aren't there. I've applied for jobs with the city of Baltimore, with the state of Maryland, obviously the state health department. I've applied for positions.
So are these health related?
I'm a one-trick pony, Sunil. Just put me in a room and tell me to do public health and I'll just do it. But, I have very transferable skills, a broad range of skills in research, in program management. I do community organizing because that's part of public health, doing outreach and education, engaging people around new health behaviors and adopt new innovations or give us feedback on innovation. There's some complexity, though. I'm not your run-of-the-mill, early career public health research / program practitioner. I am a person who has a second job as a state legislator. And that job, although it's on paper, it's defined as part-time. We are a citizen legislature where for 90 days every year, we are full-time, balls to the wall, passing laws in session in Annapolis. And the other 9 months of the year, we all go home to our home districts. And everyone needs to have full-time regular employment. Well, I wasn't able to come back to a full-time regular employment or even consulting employment. I had to come back and start job hunting. Who is going to employ me knowing that I'm not going to be available 90 days a year?
Is that the most difficult thing about the job hunt, or are there other difficulties you have faced?
In the 8 years or so that I've been in elected office, explaining the 90-day model is the hardest. Back in my first year in office, I was looking for a job and I was in an interview, and everything had lined up and it looked like I was at the top of the list to get hired. Interview's going great. And all of a sudden, the interviewer said to me, so you're clearly qualified, you'd be a great member of the team, but there's just one thing on your CV. I just want you to clarify. What is this delegate? What is this? And I said, oh, well, we have a part-time legislature and there's just a few days a year. I just need a little flexibility, right? What days are those? Well, January to April. I just need a little flexibility. Everyone has a full-time job and everybody manages to make it work. Do you know what this person did? This person slammed down their little notebook and they pushed their chair away from the table and they stomped out of the interview. They slammed the door open and stomped out of the interview room. Now, I have been lucky. I will say this, Sunil. I've been lucky in these 8 years. I've had a couple of fantastic short-term, part-time opportunities, experiences. I worked at the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, which is a unit of University of Baltimore, studies neighborhood data and reports on neighborhood indicators. I was so lucky. I got to serve there for about a year as a civic engagement fellow, did some research and some writing for them, and they understood the flexibility I needed, but that was not in the field of public health. It's been a challenge. And even the position I did have briefly at Hopkins School of Public Health in the International Health Department, which I really loved, which is my home, it was very difficult to interweave my delegate responsibilities with that regular job model. So it's a huge problem. And I'm not unique because there are 188 other people in the Maryland legislature who face the same complexity that I do. We experience, as public servants, the kinds of complex demands that our constituents simply don't see. I shared my story on social media yesterday because it's been really years. It's not just since the current federal administration cut foreign aid and killed USAID that I lost my job. And that's why it's been hard. It's been hard ever since I became a legislator.
Have you thought of a pivot away from global public health?
I spent my whole life dreaming of the career that I had, and I got to do it. And I'm really grateful. I'm really lucky. The fact is, though, that for me, my skills are transferable. And not only that, everything that I did as an international health researcher and practitioner, I've done in my own community. I've applied my research skills, my outreach education, community mobilization, grant writing, program management. I've literally done all of that in my neighborhood. I am literally right now, as we speak, organizing, having wrote a grant to fund a placemaking project on my own block. I'm leading an effort to install alley gates, gating my alley, increasing greening with flower pots and plants, and increasing safety by mounting string lights, sort of cafe lights around the block. This project, it's called like our alley gating and greening project, that was very grateful to get funded by the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development under their placemaking grant program.
So practically, when you see that, what do you do? What kinds of positions you're thinking about? Or are you thinking about completely moving in a direction that is different? So one of the people that is going also on the same podcast episode as you, he's also was let go from USAID, and he's now has a sausage food truck.
Whoa!
Yeah, and the sausages are great.
I love that.
It's called Plan B sausages.
Oh my golly, that's fabulous. Is he in Montgomery County? Where is he?
He is in Montgomery County.
Oh, we need him.
Not far from me.
So that's such a great question, Sunil. Here's what's going to happen. People like me, folks who've been displaced from their regular employment, from the professional calling that they've had for their lives, smart, energetic folks like that are going to find opportunities. They may create them themselves. And I absolutely am.
How are you thinking about creating new opportunities?
I referred to this alligating project that I've been leading for years, and that's about to come to fruition. That is an example of community development. And I believe there's always going to be a need for community development leadership and organizing. So I've thought about establishing a consultancy where I could offer my services to communities, neighborhoods, cities, municipalities, not just here in Maryland, but in other places. And of course, that will take time. I'm not naive, but I've got a demonstrated track record of doing.
How much time do you think you have financially?
This is the moment that calls for creativity and fearlessness for all of us. So I'm not saying I know exactly how to do it and what to do. I didn't prepare to have my industry destroyed and have a plan B for my industry being destroyed. When I'm a fully formed adult, I am figuring it out as I go. So I'm thinking consulting. I am thinking about obviously applying for a regular job. I'm committed to being here in Baltimore and Maryland and serving the constituents who put me in office. But I won't say there hasn't been a moment or two where I thought, wow, I could always go back to Taiwan and teach English like I did when I was 19. But then that moment passes and I remember how much I love my neighborhood and my city. People here need me. So I'm open. Do you know what they say on LinkedIn? Open to work. I'm open to work, Sunil.
One of the real problems with reconfiguring life, particularly in a country, in a culture where individualism is so dominant, it is hard for us to ask for help. And that's what you did, to some very resounding success, it seems.
Well, I don't have employment yet. But what I do have is the most amazing, generous, beautiful gift. And that's the response of my community. That is the collective reaching out of open arms and embrace that says, we see you, we hear you, we want to help you. And that, to me, that's gold right there. And I take it as a sign that opening my heart in that way, as hard as it was the right thing to do. And I believe that being open will reveal other ideas.
Robin Lewis, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Maryland State Delegate from Baltimore, Robin Lewis.
Going, can't wait to dive in. If it drops, I'm down. Sign me up to clown. If it's on, I'm in. Let's begin. 'Cause I'm in.
That's all for this episode of I Hate Politics, where we aim to stem the decline in local news by working with community voices. Don't forget to tune in to our Tuesday morning news analysis. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Silver Spring power pop band The Airport 77s, Andy Sullivan on guitar, John Kelly on drums, and Cal Everett on the bass. The songs for this episode come from their brand new album, Don't Let Go. You can find their music at theairport77s.com and at live concerts all over the DC region. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.
Do you like ice cream? Depends on the time of year. Take it or leave it in February, but summer's almost here. I got a buddy down at Baskin Robbins. Maybe he can hook us up. 31 flavors, rainbow jimmies. Need a bucket loader, let's hop a city bus. See where it takes us. Wind up in some neighborhood where we've never been before. Maybe we can make new friends. Maybe we'll just get lost. Ask our fellow strap hangers where they think we should get off. 'Cause I'm in, if it's on, I'm in. Can't wait to get going, can't wait to dive in. If it drops, I'm down, sign me